What comes to mind when you think about the richest countries in the world? Do you think about mighty nations with large land areas that lead the world in terms of military prowess and technological innovation? Well, you might be surprised to learn that some of the wealthiest nations in the world are in fact among the smallest. You might be wondering what we mean when we say a country is rich. As you probably know, in recent times the income inequality gap between the wealthy and poor has grown exponentially. While GDP, or gross domestic product, measures the total value of all goods and services, taking that number and dividing it by the number of full-time residents of a country gives us a better idea of how rich a country's population is compared to others. So join Viewcation as we take a look at the 10 richest countries in the world by GDP per capita. 10. Brunei Darussalam. The Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah, lives in utter luxury. No expense is spared when it comes to his accommodations, consumables, or entertainment. His lavish palace features 1,788 rooms, 257 of which are bathrooms, as well as an enormous banquet hall that can accommodate up to a staggering 5,000 guests, a mosque that up to 1,500 guests can worship at, a climate-controlled stable that houses 200 ponies, 5 swimming pools, and 18 elevators. The Sultan's wealth comes from the vast oil and natural gas reserves found within his country's borders. It's estimated he has a net worth of more than $30 billion. That's about 50 times the net worth of the UK's Queen Elizabeth. While the Sultan's immense wealth allows him to live it up, malnutrition in Brunei is not uncommon. It's believed over a third of the nation's 450,000 residents live in extreme poverty. Fortunately, Brunei citizens weren't hit very hard by COVID. That being said, the pandemic did take a significant toll on oil prices. The war in Ukraine, however, has led to oil prices bouncing back. As such, recent predictions predict the country's economy will grow by 5.8% this year. The United States. Given its size and reputation, it's not surprising the US would appear on this list. Even at the height of the worst phase of the pandemic in 2020, the US still managed to climb into the top 10 list of wealthiest nations. Many Americans actually got richer during the pandemic, but sadly, many Americans did lose their jobs and businesses during that time. And instead of adding that stimulus money to their savings accounts, they were left with no other choice than to use it for necessities. So while the rich got richer, the poor once again got poorer. Since 2020, however, fortunately, the job market has recovered, but now Americans are seeing inflation rates at a 40-year high. Despite all this, the collective wealth of America's billionaire class increased by $1.7 trillion during the pandemic. Before we tell you more, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Viewcation if you haven't already. 8. Norway. When oil and gas reserves were discovered in the North Sea in the 1960s, Norway's economy was transformed practically overnight. The government subsequently built the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, valued at more than $1 trillion today. Norway is Western Europe's top petroleum producer, and for decades the country has benefited from rising prices. Even so, oil prices crashed at the beginning of 2020, sending the krone into a freefall. The fallout from the pandemic sent Norway into the most significant economic decline since World War II. Since then, however, the economy has gradually recovered. Norway might have taken an economic hit during the worst of the pandemic, but that hasn't caused the country to be any less wealthy in the long run, especially considering that $1.2 trillion wealth fund. Unlike other wealthy nations, Norway has one of the lowest income inequality gaps in the world. 7. United Arab Emirates. Before oil was discovered in this Persian Gulf country in the 50s, the UAE was known for being an agricultural, trading, and fishing hub. These days, the population enjoys considerable wealth. Here you can find glitzy shopping complexes sitting alongside traditional Islamic architecture. Workers from all over the globe are lured to the UAE by tax-free salaries and near-constant sunshine. In fact, only 20% or so of the people who live in the UAE are local natives. Outside of the hydrocarbon field, the UAE's economy is becoming increasingly diversified. Construction and tourism have ramped up in recent years. And despite the fact that fossil fuels are said to be on the way out, global demand continues to increase. The pandemic might have caused oil prices to plummet, but they've since recovered, and the UAE's economy has likewise rebounded. 6. Switzerland. Switzerland has long been world-renowned for its prosperity and wealth. Historical, political, and economic factors have all played a role in the buildup of the country's wealth. The invention of white chocolate, the Swiss Army knife, the computer mouse, and Velcro have all contributed to the country's riches. But today, the country of 8.6 million citizens owes the majority of its wealth to the banking, tourism, and insurance industries. It's also one of the world's biggest exporters of pharmaceuticals, precision instruments, machinery, precious metals, and gemstones. 5. Macau. Tourism is the bread and butter of Macau's economy. Much of that is isolated in the gambling industry. It was legalized in the country in the 19th century and has been ever since the linchpin of Macau's economy. Macau was at one time a colony of the Portuguese Empire, but this special administrative region of the People's Republic of China has seen its immense wealth grow at an astonishing pace in recent years. It has a population of just over 600,000, and within its territory there are more than 40 casinos spread out around 30 kilometers. When COVID struck, obviously, the gaming industry took a huge hit. For a moment, Macau even slipped out of the top wealthiest countries ranking. While things might not be as good as they once were, Macau's economy is beginning to recover. Even so, it's estimated the casino industry is losing about $20 million a day. 4. Qatar. Oil and natural gas are the cornerstones of Qatar's economy. This industry accounts for about 70% of the government's total revenue and about 60% of the country's GDP. Qatar is said to have the world's third largest proven natural gas reserve. It's also the second largest exporter of natural gas on the planet. The per-person GDP of a Qatari resident today is about $100,000 a year. This sounds incredible, but considering that in 2014 it was closer to $143,000, it's clear the global economic downturn has taken a toll even on this prosperous country. 3. Ireland. Ireland's GDP per capita is currently sitting at around $80,000 per year, making it one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Until recently, the country's economic trajectory seemed unstoppable. Ireland was especially hit hard by the 2008 financial crisis, and its economy took a further beating during the pandemic. Even so, Ireland remains one of the world's largest corporate tax havens. Multinationals benefit from this, but the average Irish citizen does not. That being said, the standards of living are still far better in Ireland than in other parts of Europe, and wages tend to be more fair than in other places in the world. Ireland's main industries include pharmaceuticals, chemicals, computer software and hardware, food and beverages, medical devices, and brewing. 2. Singapore. Singapore is a country whose primary exports include chemicals, electronics, and services. It's also the regional hub for wealth management. The nation is a wealthy financial haven where dividends and capital gains are tax-free. When the city-state earned its independence in 1965, nearly half of its population was illiterate. Boasting virtually no natural resources to speak of, Singapore fought its way to the top of the economic ladder by promoting itself as one of the most business-friendly places on earth. During the pandemic, the nation's economy plummeted by more than 5%, but in 2021, its GDP bounced back to 7.6%. 2022's growth is expected to be around 4%. Number 1. Luxembourg. This country is the wealthiest in the EU in terms of GDP per capita. Its citizens also enjoy the highest standard of living on the European continent. Luxembourg has long been a prominent center for big private banking institutions. The country's financial sector is the most significant contributor to its historically booming economy. The wealthy class from across the globe set up offshore bank accounts here. While you could visit the nation for its beautiful countryside and opulent castles, many who store their riches here never step foot within its borders. It boasts a population of about 630,000, and tourism is another one of its major breadwinners. The people of Luxembourg enjoy unparalleled housing, education, and healthcare systems. During the height of the pandemic, Luxembourg weathered the global situation far better than most of its European neighbors. In 2014, the country topped the $100,000 per capita GDP mark and hasn't looked back since. Now it's time to hear from you. Have you ever visited any of these countries? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Viewcation if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.